Hello, all, and welcome to this session, our fifth in the Bablr Vision Pack series. I'm Abhinav Banerjee, your host for today, and today's discussion will be around a question that is inevitably going to present itself to all you young parents before long, that of preschool. Is it mandatory? When is the right age to start? What options do we have? All of these are questions that we hope to be able to address today. Now, before we get down to the actual discussion, I would want to start by reading out a disclaimer. So this is an informative session meant only to stimulate discussion and make parents aware of the various options available to them for preschool education. Bablr does not endorse any particular approach, nor is the Bablr curriculum in conflict with any form of preschool education. Parents are advised to carry out their own research and exercise individual judgment as to which approach works best for them. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Also, one thing that we should clarify at the very outset is that preschool, the term itself, can mean different things. But for the purposes of our discussion today, we shall take preschool to mean all education up till the age of 6 or before primary grade school begins. All right? So play school, KG, nursery, whatever you call it, all of these will come under the common umbrella of preschool for our discussion today. Now, one of the most significant developments of 2020, besides, of course, the obvious one that we're still reeling from even as we speak, was the introduction of the new education policy here in India. It brought about the transition to a 5+3+3+4 model of education from the so far prevalent 10+2. These additional 3 years are in fact the years of pre-primary grade school, which have now also been brought under the ambit of the new education policy. And here is what we know about it so far. So the new education policy's Early Childhood Care and Education, or ECCE, will be administered all across India through a network of Anganwadi schools and standalone pre-primary schools, with special focus on socio-economically disadvantaged districts in a phased manner. Also, before a student can be deemed ready for grade school, or before the age of 5, every child will need to attend a preparatory class, or Balavatika. The blueprint for all of this is currently being laid out, and definite changes will be made only by 2025, as per current estimates. So we'll keep you posted on that one as and when details emerge. Let me introduce you to the first of my guests today, Kate Harvey, who is our early years learning expert from Bablr UK. She has a background in education from across a variety of settings in the UK, France, and Spain, having taught ages 3 through 18. She happens to be a forest school practitioner, which involves conducting sessions for preschoolers in an outdoor setting and derives from methods such as Montessori, Waldorf, Piaget, among others. So safe to say she has a pretty good overview of the best practices in early years education. Welcome to you, Kate.
Hello everyone, Abhinav. It's great to be here and to see so many names.
Great. Also joining us is to help us understand the options available to Indian parents by putting into perspective all the insights that we will gather today in the Indian context is Vidyut Joshi, someone I trust you know well by now. She is in charge of content and research at Bablr and tracks all developments in the Indian education landscape. Welcome to you, Vidyut.
Hi Abhinav, hi Kate. Good to be here again. And hi to all the parents. Great to see you all. Well, not really see you all, but at least see your names. Nice to be here. Looking forward to this session.
Yes, we have got an exciting session lined up today. So we, of course, will get our guests to start sharing their insights in just a bit. But before that, we thought we'd shuffle up things a wee bit today. Normally, we ask you to hold on to your questions till the end of the session. And while, of course, we will do the customary Q&A at the end, I also want to start by throwing open the floor for you parents. So what I'll need you to do now is type in your responses to the question, what are the questions, the burning questions that come to your mind when you think preschool? All right. Let us spend no more than 3 to 4 minutes on this and get your responses in. criteria to choose a preschool. Okay. Which method is best? This is pretty good. What's the right age for preschool? If a nursery is 3 years or 3.5 years, how to promote social interactions to engage with others? Age criteria. Okay. Okay, great. How early to start preschool? What are the sources in this pandemic? Wonderful, wonderful. So this is exactly what we were hoping for, to get in your responses, and this sort of sets the tone for the session. So great. Most of these, hopefully, we shall be able to answer during the course of the session itself. And if there are any remaining, we'll take them up during our final Q&A. So great, thanks. So Kate, I want to start by asking you, you did see the responses, and it's clear, of course, that it's a question most parents are faced with. So what would you say is it about preschool? Is it something we just sort of subscribe to, following the herd without, questioning if it's really necessary? What benefits does it offer that makes most parents and children consider it pretty much mandatory?
Well, it's a good question, because preschool itself, for the most part, I think it's important not to get confused that early childhood care and education and preschool is more than just preparation for grade school. It refers more holistically, actually, to a child's social, emotional, cognitive and physical needs. So that's what we're fulfilling in order to build this solid foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. In fact, preschool as a concept, as a timeline, sets the tone for the rest of their lives. And I think it's important, before we begin, to note that there's never been a period of time so unprecedented that has drawn attention to the importance of early years education. With the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, many parents have been worried that children are missing out on key social interactions that they would have otherwise had at preschool, which is an environment in itself which children can explore, they can gain a sense of self, they play with peers, and they build self-confidence. And I'm sure, as Bablr users yourselves, for the most part, you're probably already aware of the far-reaching implications of this early years period for both cognitive and social development up until the age of 6. And a really interesting theory, not only does preschool provide holistic benefits for children, it's worth mentioning what's called the Heckman Equation. So this was developed by the Nobel Prize-winning University of Chicago professor James Heckman, and he understood that there were great gains to be had by investing in the early and equal development of human potential. Now, what this means for children is that he believed that many of the world's problems could be solved with sufficient investment in the early childhood space. And without thinking of humans too much as machines with that, what it really means is that we're sustaining cognitive and social skills in the 0 to 3 window. Those skills that they gain, the result is that we gain a more capable, productive and valuable population, workforce and society that pays dividends for generations to come. So not only does preschool prepare a child for further education, it also provides them with a vital set of skills in an ever-changing world. And I think that's really important to know.
Okay, so what's clear is that it's basically, of course, in the greater interest of making the most of the child's early years. So something that I think all our Bablr parents, without exception, are aligned on. Just that there is institutional support towards that end available, and which is good to make use of. Yeah. So that's great, Kate. So we did begin, of course, by recounting your rich experience and the fact that you have a pretty good overview of the best practices that exist globally in this regard. Could you run us through some of the most popular methods for early years development?
Absolutely. I saw some questions crop up in relation to this, so we can cover it. So what I'm talking about here in terms of theories is that there have been many educational theories that have been adapted over the years, and now preschools usually use a combination of the following ones that I'm going to talk about. And you may have encountered many of them before when you've been reading books or looking into picking a preschool. And as you're going into this process, I think it's really helpful to understand what they mean in practical terms, because sometimes they can be a bit vague. So let's come first to the Montessori method, which I'm sure you're all aware of. The sort of buzzword around Montessori is child-centered learning, and this is really popular. It's a specific method that involves child-led activities, and it involves a classroom with children of varying ages and teachers who encourage a lot of independence or free play among their pupils. So it's really focused on the child leading their own learning. It also involves a prepared environment, and you might have seen this before, with lots of activity stations. It's tidy, it's simple, and every element in a Montessori classroom exists for a specific purpose. And this might be used in combination with other theories, such as Jean Piaget, who is another famous theorist. He was very keen on active learning, sometimes called constructivism, if you've read it in a book. Jean Piaget presented the idea that children learn best when they're actively exploring a very stimulating and challenging environment, and they in fact construct their own learning, and they need the opportunities to play and to discover. He also focused on this idea of overcoming difficulty and challenge. So having a go, the child is thinking and creating critically and trying new things even if they fail. There's also this idea of readiness, and that children need to reach certain levels of cognitive development at different stages. Not strictly, but that was the idea that came from Jean Piaget. Another theory, again very popular and very widely used worldwide, is the kindergarten method from Friedrich Froebel. And the method here is a very nurturing environment, very supportive. There's no real focus on competition between children here. It's something that allows children to transition from home to education very easily. Children learn through fun and engaging activities like art and music in kindergarten, and playtime is often an opportunity to instill important skills, cognitively, motor skills and social skills. Another theory, which again has been adapted in its own way and is definitely useful, is Lev Vygotsky's theory of adult-led and child-initiated play. You might read this in theory as socio-constructivism, and this emphasizes the importance of the fact that children learn about themselves primarily through their relationships with others, not just children, but also adults. And so this theorist emphasized the importance that there's adult-led and child-initiated play, and that they can learn both within the family and beyond. So this often places emphasis on the importance of planned activities, so making sure that the teacher has prepared something coming into the lesson. That was his theory. Another one, which is you probably heard of or have seen in passing, is the Emilia Reggio theory, and this is the idea that children are very curious individuals, and they find opportunity in the world around them, and they have a very powerful potential to learn from their surroundings, and that includes group and social interactions as well. So the importance of both individual and group interaction. And then I saw that someone mentioned in the questions a reference to Waldorf and Steiner, and this is often the theory that is a focus on creative and imaginative play, and that a child's spiritual, moral and creative sides need nurturing just as much as their intellect. So this is again more holistic. You'll often find in a Steiner or Waldorf classroom that learning is not subject-based, it's very holistic, it's integrated. For example, you won't find a maths lesson, you won't find a reading lesson. You'll find that they'll learn through cooking in the kitchen and measurement, and it's all about experiential learning. Another focus in Waldorf and Steiner is that a calm and soothing environment is very beneficial for children. So, for example, you'll see lots of natural materials and tools in a Steiner classroom. And then, of course, most preschools use a blend of these philosophies anyway. It's very rare that you find, schools adhering to purely one, especially in this day and age. And it also depends entirely on your values as a parent and the unique needs of your child. And when we'll look into some other factors, I think there were some questions about, what to choose when choosing preschool. We'll expand on that later in the session.
So, Kate, that was a great overview of the early learning prevalent methodologies. So, what I would like to say here is that actually all these methods, they address child learning needs from slightly different angles. So, what some of them tend to do is they tend to be the focus is fact-based, while others tend to focus on imagination. While some believe in kind of discovery by the children, others believe in a kind of a planned intervention. So, I'm just a watcher of these early education methods, I would say. And these were proposed by really some of the luminaries in the field of education. But there is something that I feel, when I look at these methods, there is a bit of a dogma attached to these methods. Why? Because it can't really be true that, all of them, so at the same time that only discovery or only imagination works, that's what I feel. So there is probably a reason behind this dogma, maybe because these methods, they started 50, 100 years ago. And at that time, probably the society had limited resources, limited teachers. There were many students in one class. So the teachers would need to take that approach, to follow this one kind of a thing. But today, in this age of technology, so it seems to me the time has come for a more personalized learning for each child and their needs. So, so a particular belief or a philosophy shouldn't be the center of education. It should be the child who should be at the center. And anything that works for the child works. That's the theory, I would say. But having said that, I would like to do a quick share of, Kate put forward so many methodologies. Just a quick share about, look at this plot. Don't look at it from the point of view of a mathematical point of view. Just look at it from this methodology point of view. So we have these two axes, what the y-axis is basically the interpolation of the human mind. So it's like fact-based to imagination. And on the x-axis, what you have is like passive intervention. That's on this side, on the extreme right, passive intervention by the caregivers, and leaving the child for discovery. That's what it means. And on the other end, we have active intervention, and which is a planned intervention. So more of the caregivers coming in. That's what we mean, right? So if these methods which Kate was talking about, all of them seem to kind of gravitate to certain areas. Like Montessori is fact-based and leaving everything to discovery and things like that. So it would probably fit into this quadrant. With Piaget, it's more of discovery-based. So it lies right straight on the coordinate itself. Emilia, Reggio would fall in this quadrant, more leaning towards the discovery side, whereas Waldorf is imagination-based. It would fit here. Similarly, the Froebel kindergarten method would be more of a planned intervention, and Lev Vygotsky would probably lie in this quadrant. So this is, what we feel. If you analyze these methods, this is how they seem to fit in. But if you think about it, what we did at Bablr, we studied all these things, and we felt that the best position for Bablr would be somewhere in the center of it. So what it means is that it leaves you equidistant from all points, and which means a very adaptable mindset has been created for this. And over a period of time, both the child and the methodology will adapt to each other. So this was the thinking behind the thought that went into creating Bablr. I just thought it was relevant over here, matching with the methodologies which we were discussing just now. But having said that, so there are so many of these different methodologies, but each of these methodologies, they all believe in one thing for sure, that there should be a lot of regular experiences for your child, and they are all play based, most of them. So many of the preschools or play schools use a combination of these, and it's not, the focus is not one. So what we as parents should do is, you should figure out what works best for your child and go ahead with that, is what I would say.
It was quite an insightful visual and a great summary of the very many methods out there. And the fact that it's a spectrum from an imagination or creativity-based curriculum, allowing solely for discovery on one hand, to a more factor life-based curriculum with full curation of elements and planned intervention on the other. And the more we make the child adaptable by positioning them such that neither end of the spectrum is too much of a stretch, the better it is for them. And so speaking of making the child more adaptable, Kate, you happen to be a forest school practitioner, as I understand it. I think this would be something pretty novel for us. So could you share with us more as to what that is about? And I also suppose that is not exactly mainstream, and it is likely considered an alternative mode of early years learning there in the UK. So what other such alternative modes have you personally encountered or know of that are worthy of consideration?
Well, it's an alternative method, but it is becoming very mainstream, actually. And I think very soon we'll see it as part of a curriculum. And in terms of other alternative methods, I think the most that you would encounter are, for example, purely Steiner schools or purely Montessori schools. But as we've just discussed, most of them are usually a blend. And forest school is probably the most prevalent, which comes from Scandinavia. And speaking of, child-centered learning and making that the center of it, that is the basis of forest school. It's a learning approach that helps develop confidence through hands-on activities and through outdoor learning. And it can be adapted to any space. And many common activities include things like shelter building and games, campfire building and cooking. But it could take place, in a relatively indoor environment. And it's what it is that recent research has found that children are spending increasingly less time outside. Well, not too long ago, children spent all of their time outside. So there's a call to reverse these trends, to reconnect children with their environment, and that's why it's become so popular. And I think why people like it so much is that it promotes all aspects of child development, while allowing children to flourish that might, children that might lack confidence or might find a conventional classroom uninspiring. And that's really amazing to see. And often I find that parents are taking it into their own hands, as they should. They're implementing their own forest school inspired activities, and that's been a real trend, such as nature art and sensory walks. And that's really great to see. So in terms of alternative methods, that's one. It's not mainstream, but it is slowly becoming very mainstream.
That is so wonderful, isn't it? I mean, across much of the ancient world, in fact, nature was such an integral part of our learning, and ancient Indian learning included. So if you have seen the visuals, the imagery, one of the most common depictions is sort of life lessons being given by gurus to their students under the shade of the sprawling banyan tree. So it's unfortunate how far removed we have become from nature since. And it's great to see that there is a model like that now gaining acceptance. And I guess it is a good idea for all of us everywhere to eclectically take in the good parts from these alternative modes of learning. And because any one method, and especially the current mainstream one, is far from perfect. Vidyut, where do you suppose we in India are at when it comes to embracing any such alternative early years learning method?
Yeah. Yeah, Abhinav, first of all, Kate, that your forest school sounds like a very interesting proposition. And probably if I was a toddler, I would have enrolled in your school for sure. Yeah. But, as Abhinav, you said, Indian philosophy has been very much close to nature. And in fact, let me take you back to the times of probably Shanti Niketan was one of the first sort of forest school methodology that might have come into the picture. So, and even today, it's a
Yeah.
school which encourages that way of thinking. So, there are a lot of experimentations that have gone on in India, and most schools, they add their own touch, I would say. In fact, there is a school called as Kalakshetram, which sort of hones the talents, the classical talents, singing and dancing, these kind of talents, and little kids are groomed into that right from very small ages, like age of 3. So, these are kind of alternative methods which have been prevalent in India for a long time. Parents are the ones who are the ones who are instrumental in all these kind of experimentations, and they have done a lot of work in this field. But what I feel is the best part of preschool education is it does not have to suffer from a limitation of a structure. Why? Because it is mostly play based, and that's why the parents are our biggest partners. They are the ones who provide these alternative means. And in fact, in these COVID times, well, parents have been doing it all. So thankfully, they have a lot of paraphernalia available. They can order several activity kits. There are boxes. There are apps. So many available options to them. So which can be used for experimenting. But once again, it's not basically about the method. It's about your child. So you have to keep thinking about what is it. Keep your child in the center, and then work towards what works best for your child. So that's what I would say in terms of kind of alternative. It's an experiment. Also, in some of the Indian preschools, you have the public and the private preschools. So even the public preschools like Anganwadis, they do follow a lot of good researched methodology. In fact, there was a revolutionary one which I still remember. One of the government schools, they had this Learn English program. So Learn English program was aired on the All India Radio, and then kids could tune in at that particular time and listen to English lessons. And they were really beautiful lessons, which even students from private preschools would attend. So it's as I said, it's not about the method. It's basically the quality and the thought that goes behind it. So anything is a good method. So there are even some corporate companies who, as a social initiative, they adopt public schools and do all the conduct preschool methods over there, different kinds of it, and those are very effective as well. I had been a part of an organization called as Akanksha Foundation, which used to do this, and they were doing a tremendous job. Later on, maybe some of our audience may have heard, it became into a big revolution. Teach for India, it was called. So it was an amazing venture. So things like this keep happening all the time. And our government too, there are this, you can join in at any, into the mainstream through NIOS, you just give the exam and you can be positioned in any place over there as well. So you have that option here in India as well.
So ultimately, of course, all of it boils down to that it is all to be centered around the child. The child's development decides everything. Kate, to come back to you, what would you say are the key success factors for a parent to make the most of the preschool experience? How do they know it has been effective once the child is through with preschool and they're ready to enter grade school? What skill sets should the child be expected to have developed at that stage?
Well, contrary to popular belief, success isn't judged by whether a child has reached certain academic milestones, and I think that can be quite confusing. And the idea that there's a preschool curriculum doesn't mean that, you know, that this child has to reach these points. If they haven't, it's not the end of the world, and it's certainly not a competition. This isn't the purpose of preschool. In fact, preschool is just a framework in which children are encouraged to adapt more seamlessly to their next stage. It's not reaching milestones, and it's certainly not strict. However, the benefits of it are endless, and the mere experience of attending preschool is at the nexus of lifelong development for a child, and it has lasting positive effects on them. So I think, you know, after a year of the pandemic as well, we've realised that while the 0 to 3 window is crucial, and we've really got to, you know, take that period and use it well, parents should not be pressuring children to catch up, and we've become, you know, very aware of that. It's about more providing the right environment for learning to make the next stage easier. So just using an example, the EYFS in the UK, which is the early years foundation stage, this is the framework used. This focuses on 7 key areas, and it's by no means strict, it's just areas that we look to develop. So yeah, so these are the 7 key areas. So we've got personal, social and emotional development, communication and language, so that's phonics, physical development, literacy, mathematics, understanding the world. So this is a bit abstract, but it means how children relate to their surroundings, and this might include, you know, learning about certain cultural events and things like that. And then expressive arts and design, so that would include mixed medias, art, music, and so on. So, you know, they're all quite holistic generally, and I think ultimately the skill set that a child should have is more holistic. It's that a child should be healthy, a child should be happy, curious and confident, and that's, as a parent, that's always the ultimate goal of anything after preschool. And I think that those criteria are the true foundation for lifelong success.
That is a pretty decent guiding list, and like you said, the development of much of it cannot be forced, really. The best we can do is provide the right environment for it, and just allow it to happen, for it to blossom by itself. Also, one would imagine the entire responsibility cannot be put on the school alone. Yeah, parents have as much a role to play during that stage, during early years learning. So when does it start, and how many hours a day should be devoted to learning activities, preschool and activities with parents combined?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some people touched on this as well. Mm-hmm. And it's completely right, really, that, you know, many parents' lives have become very busy, and we know that, and there's been a lot of onus placed solely on the teacher and the preschool itself. And I think that that's something that we just need to reassess, really, because parents play such an important role, as Vidyut has previously mentioned. They are the catalysts for learning, and it's not something to be daunted by, but it starts from the day a child is born, if not earlier. And this should be something that is exciting, actually, and there are ways of making that happen. And I think after the pandemic, we've certainly realised that. Well, after, and we're still very much in it. So I think in terms of how many hours and how much time you should be spending on learning activities, if you are in doubt and you don't want to be dogmatically sticking to a certain number of hours a day, little and often is best. There are learning opportunities in everything, and they can be built into life and play, and they shouldn't be overcomplicated either. And you know, it's just the small things, such as the everyday conversations, the make-believe play, games with numbers and letters, flashcards, reading books together, and involvement in everyday activities such as household chores. They're vital. And so, you know, I think in the pandemic as well, we've realised that there are so many opportunities just from being in the same house and spending all of our time together. We learn so much and we pick up so much. And I think that's why Bablr can be really useful as well, because the Bablr platform is a really fuss-free way. It takes away all of the stress of supporting a child's development. It incorporates all of those aspects of home learning that sometimes we might get worried about, such as establishing a routine, keeping active, making good use of digital devices, which is really important as well, that children are aware of the technologies and use them correctly. And also socializing as well. A lot of what Bablr touches on is interaction with others. And it also takes into account the fact that some children naturally respond better to a mix of shorter activities to keep them from getting bored. And, you should always be conscious of that as well. In terms of hours, there's value in the smallest things, like I said, whether it takes 2 minutes or an hour, and that depends entirely on your schedule and how your child learns best. But what we should stress is that 0 to 3 window is really precious, and you only get that time with them once. So it will be great to look back on that and think we had the most wonderful time, and it was really beautiful. But informal learning is really beneficial. So if you are at home and right now and you have the time to spend with your children, that's great. You can find opportunities for experiential learning in many things. I think the most important thing to remember is that when you're relaxed and when you're receptive to opportunities for learning, they just appear out of every corner, really. And that when you provide a safe and stimulating environment for a child, all of these opportunities for learning will appear. In terms of choosing how many days you might want to send a child to a preschool, if that's what you're thinking, a lot of parents opt for, they tend to adapt it. So 2 or 3 full days, around 12 to 15 hours a week might be a good starting point. And then you can, alter it from there, if that's helpful at all.
Okay, so little and often is best, like you said, and who better than parents to oversee and make sure that is delivered. And I do believe parents are getting to do that now more than ever, during the times of the pandemic. Vidyut, how would you perceive the next few years, in the wake of the ongoing situation and the new reality?
Yeah. So this is a very important question, Abhinav. Well, I think that this pandemic has taught us so many things. For one, whether to be or not to be dogmatic. So this was a picture shared by one of my friends, and I found it so relevant, and it really brought a smile to my face. But basically, what I want to say is education is becoming, in this time, has become completely online. And you would see kids as young as 3 and 4, they are attending online classes. So what has happened to all the experiential learning and stuff like that? So what does it mean? It means that change is absolutely inevitable, and it is best to be prepared for it. That's how it is. And how long this pandemic would last is anybody's guess. Things are changing, it's so fluid. Everything is so fluid. Just yesterday it was declared that even the 10th standard exam, which is a huge public exam in India, by the way, Kate, that has been cancelled. And probably this has happened for the first time in history. So, yeah. So, you have to be prepared for almost everything. So what does that leave parents with? So it only gives them with the choice of taking charge of their child's education, which is really important. As Kate pointed out, so it's best even probably to start at birth. You have that time with your child, and you as a caregiver, you can make the best use of it. So most important is you need lots and lots of love, especially in these trying times. Yes, you would be stressed. You have a lot of work to do, but this is the best time that your child can learn along with you. And as Kate had said, include your child in every activities within chores at home, things that you do, even a simple task of maybe you're folding clothes. Include your child in that activity as well. Talk to your child, talk a lot. And we at Bablr, in fact, if we've always been talking about talk, tell, and curate, the TTC methodology, which we call it. So that is, talk a lot, make conversations with your child, use rich vocabulary, so that all these words are, even if your child may not be able to talk as yet, but it's always falling on his ears, and he is a silent listener to this. And what is happening is you're providing all these developmental inputs to your child at the right time. And remember, this talk, tell, curate never stops. It even goes beyond the age of 6 years, and it just goes on. And in fact, that happens the other way around with me now. Now my daughter is 14 and she does the TTC with me. So so it's something that, it's very important for parents to kind of, do this at home, create a rich experience of activities around them. You can have puppet shows, read books, tell stories, do just about everything that includes the child, and that gives them a variety of experience. So curate this rich environment for your child. So, and this is probably going to be the reality, at least for a while. Children are going to be learning this way. So from the point of view, of the environment, surrounding and education, all that, it's all fluid. So it's best that you are prepared for it, and a child that has been groomed for it right from this stage definitely has the potential to handle anything. That's my view of it.
That's so right. I mean, the experience the children of today are living through, one can hope will sort of lay the seeds for adaptability, for flexibility, and empathy towards their surroundings and others in the long run. So I guess that is a heartening thing to take away from this. Kate, we have explored various preschool learning methods, told parents how they should supplement those learnings, but can we have some important quick win criteria that parents should actually be looking at when deciding on a preschool?
Yeah, absolutely. I've created a graphic, so we can have a look at that together. Okay. So we'll go through that, and I think it's quite a useful checklist, if anything, to consider some factors when you're looking for a preschool. I think naturally the first things that you're looking at with preschool are going to be practical ones. So that could be convenience, that could be cost as well. So the number one being, is it close to your house? Is it easy to travel to? And I think this is important if you want to eliminate rush. In the mornings, it can be a little bit stressful to prepare a child and yourself and get everything done. So to have a school nearby is really great. So make a list of some local preschools and maybe shortlist them. And then, of course, the price. This is obviously one of the main factors. I think the most important takeaway there is making sure that you're aware of all hidden costs on top of basic fees, and that you're comfortable with that, and that it's affordable for you and your family. And then we've included the third P, philosophy. So we've talked about these already a little bit. So now you can make an informed decision with the knowledge that you have on the different methodologies, and whether it's suitable for you, whether the preschool is attached to a grade school as well. That's something to check, whether you're happy for your child to continue learning in that way. Looking at the timetable as well, the day-to-day activities, and in relation to the philosophies that we talked about earlier, maybe checking the balance between free play and organised activities. Is that something which is well balanced? Is there enough indoor and outdoor play? And just ask lots of questions. There's no harm in asking what a typical day looks like when hopefully you go for a tour around this preschool, which we would highly recommend as well. Another thing is the ratios, and this relates largely to what we were talking about earlier. Certain educational philosophies affect the class size. So Montessori is quite child-centered on one particular child, and then other schools might focus more on group learning. But if it's a blend, then you'll have all of this. Check all the ratios. So there are different types. There's the teacher and child ratio. So the teacher is the main leader of the classroom. And then there's also the adult to child ratio. So how many assistants or adults are on hand. That's something to consider as well, because as we spoke about earlier, it's really important that your child has interactions with people outside of their family as well, both children and adult. And then maybe the space ratio as well. How much space is there per child? You can get a good overview of that when you step into a classroom. Looking at the space itself, go for a tour. Go for a tour with your child and see how they interact with the space. Maybe they're really drawn to a certain activity station, or maybe they're really drawn to the outside space. That's very telling. And I think maybe checking the security of the preschool as well. Is this somewhere where you feel comfortable sending your child? And then looking at the teachers and the staff, you might just want to check and see are all the staff qualified in early childhood care, or they have the relevant qualifications. Communication, this relates to the space as well. So have a look around on the tour. What are the displays? Are children's work on display? How does the school update you? Nowadays, there are so many different ways that a school can keep you updated. And would that be through messages, emails, pictures? A parent cannot be told by their child exactly how their day went. So it's really important that you have those that proof of learning, as we call it. And then also discipline. When you go around on a tour, maybe noticing how the behaviour is managed. Observe how teachers speak to children. Are they shouting across the playground? Things like that can really indicate how a school is run. And then also the inclusion policy. Perhaps your child needs has certain requirements. Are there facilities and trained staff on hand for children that perhaps have a certain requirement? That's really important. And then also community involvement. So preschool is part of a community, just like any other establishment. Do they play a role? Ask alumni, ask parents outside the school gates if you're on the tour. You can find them at school, or you can find them on Facebook groups, but definitely ask. It seems like there's a lot there on that checklist, but I think it's not something to be daunted by, because there are many ways of supporting a child outside of that preschool as well, and making sure that they're ready. I hope that's helpful.
So I guess from the looks of it, of course, logistical and financial considerations come first. And then, of course, the more parents can educate themselves and carry out, the required due diligence when surveying or exploring preschool options, the better. But it's a bottomless pit. And at some point, they'll have to take a leap of faith and accept that, I guess, that no preschool will be perfect and provide all that there is to provide. So whatever the school cannot, parents will have to take upon themselves to supplement on their own.
Exactly.
So final thoughts from you both on how we should perceive the importance of preschool education in the next few years. What kind of children should we be looking to raise, and what would be the most prized skill sets? Kate, start with you.
Well, I think every generation today will remember, 2020 as the year that everything changed. For parents and teachers, it has drawn our attention to the fact that children need to be prepared as a different type of citizen. They need to be more mobile, global, in such unprecedented times.
Probably a point that I would draw attention to is, the fact today even children are enrolled for coding classes, and they are developing apps as early as, you'll be surprised, as age 5. So parents definitely do want to empower children to be prepared for the future generation. Now, whether this coding is a good idea or not, I reserve my thoughts. But I still I endorse the fact that we have to help our child to grow the capacity of their brain. And that is non-deniable and non-negotiable. So how do we do that? It's, again, as I said, I would be probably re-accounting the whole thing. It's just like creating experiences for your child on a day-to-day basis, following a routine, throughout a week, curating these experiences with the effect of having to that will nurture a curious child. So, and once this curiosity has been triggered, then learning happens on its own. This is the important thing to think about. So if a curious child is a one that has already learned to learn, and that is probably the best gift that you can give.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned earlier, parents can't leave everything up to preschool, as Abhinav mentioned. No preschool is perfect, and all of these philosophies work. We can't forget that. And children learn best through experiential learning, and you can do a lot of that, at home and at school. Most schools use a combination of methods. You should be using a combination and figuring out what works best for your child. But I think the biggest asset to any child during this early years stage is that they're curious, that they're adaptable, that they're capable of learning new skills, because that's going to be required every few years. And it's something that can be very exciting, and they'll be required to learn quickly. With the right preparation, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Bablr, we are totally committed to these principles, no doubt. I mean, we, it provides the right tools for the right moment. So, of course, we are not saying that parents who don't want to use Bablr, that's fine. But what is important thing is that whatever are these methods and tools that we are talking about, implement them in any which way you can, any which way that is suitable to you and for your child. But it is a must that it must be done, because you must remember your child is growing fast, and as we all know that almost 85% of the brain development would have already happened by age 3. So that's something that that will set things in the right perspective.
All right. So the message coming through repeatedly is that preschool cannot be a substitute for parents' learning efforts, and investing of that time in supplementing preschool education is an absolute non-negotiable. So thanks very much for that, both of you, Kate and Vidyut. That was deeply, deeply informative. We are ready to take questions now. So I see one from Rekha Jain. She says, what are the basic criteria to start preschool, or how to know if the child is ready for preschool?
What I would say here is that how to know if a child is ready for preschool. In theory, a preschool should be ready for your child, and that a lot of the learning that will take place will happen along the way. I think in terms of knowing when your child is ready, that just if they've got some element of independence, so if they're potty trained, if they have they're quite independent and they can play a little bit by themselves, then that's fine. But even if they're not at that stage, they'll pick it up very quickly in preschool. So you'll know when you feel that you can let your child be in that space, because you'll notice it at home. But a lot of that preparation for preschool takes place at home. So that's what we're drawing attention to here, is the preschool is not that place that you send them to. It's that whole period from 0 to 6. So it's making sure that you're aware of that.
Yeah, and the rubric that we kind of established earlier on was that it's all meant to be centered around the child, and the parent would kind of know what's best. I think that would answer this other related question too from Deepthi, who says she's the mother of an 8-month-old, and she's heard of preschool starting from as early as 14 months. Yeah. So I think one should refrain from seeing it as any kind of a rat race or competition. Absolutely. So it's entirely
correct. I think because when they say there are children enrolling there are parents enrolling their children, 18 months is what I've heard. 14 months maybe now. It's happened a bit more earlier. The parents do tend to think, they sometimes feel that their children need to socialize more. So that is one thing very prime on their mind when they enroll in a play school. That is, we're calling a play school is just before the actual sort of preschool word begins. But I enrolled my daughter when she was 18 months old because I just wanted her to interact with kids her age and even adults, just not some of the relatives or the people at home. So that is one criteria that you should think of how your child is. Does your child really need to have that interaction? If he is getting it at home anyways, then there's no problem at all. But there could be really nuclear families where just the three of them are there, so it becomes a bit difficult for the child to mix and interact. So that is one criteria to consider. And it's great fun, I would say, for children to play with kids their age. Unfortunately, now in this pandemic times, they aren't able to. But some preschool do have Zoom sessions where they put on the video and they are, kind of interaction is happening in some way or the other. So there is no real time that it's the time when the mother knows best and she decides it's time for my child to go to school. Although formally in some schools, they in India, they do enroll in a play school, and then there would be a nursery, junior KG, and a higher KG. So you do have that many. So depending upon the type of school, they have these 3 or 4 years of education before grade happens. So that is also something that that also sets the criteria. The school that you would like to enroll your child to. Mm-hmm. That also you might want to consider.
I can see another question a bit further down here. It says, what to see. So how do we decide what is best for the child? What do we see them to decide which method to go with?
Yes, from Shilpi Kothari, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's, we've spoken about not seeing the methods as quite dogmatic, really, because most preschools are using a combination of all of those methods. And there's so much material out there that you could try so many different things, and it's all about seeing how your child reacts. So just doing certain activities, Bablr is a great way of seeing what kind of learner your child is and what brings them the most joy. So just trying all of these activities, and maybe when you do go to a preschool, asking them what kind of activities are most popular, or whether there's a wide range, and then you could tell them, my child likes to do this, is this something that you will do? I think that's a really good way of doing it, because it's very rare nowadays that a preschool will stick to one of those methods. Yeah. So it's all about knowing your child and playing with them and seeing what they like best.
What would be the best teacher-student ratio you suggest, preschool or normal schooling? If there is an ideal teacher-student ratio, would you have any figures in mind? Whoever wants to take this.
Generally, I mean, I'm sure that some preschools have quite large numbers, but as long as there's one teacher for every 10 children, I think that's fine, that's manageable. As long as maybe if there's somebody else on hand, if they've got an assistant, I think that's really good. But if there's most preschool classes, I'm not sure how it is in India, but how many?
It's the same. It's about 1:10. So you have one teacher with an assistant and 10 children. And normally when they go to their stations or when they form their groups, then that 10 is a ideal count which they do consider. So but of course it varies from school to school. But there's no ideal ratio as such, because I feel for a child to interact with more number of people, it's always good. Even if there are few, it's fine. So it's just a mindset, tuning your mindset. So there is no ideal ratio as such, but typically I think preschools, they say 1:10 seems to fit most of the preschools.
Okay, so that was a figure that they were looking for as far as the teacher-student ratio is concerned. Yeah. We have another question from Ishani, who asks if we have a figure for how many hours of preschool would be ideal for a child. Do we have any?
Yeah, actually, I think typically in India, kids go to preschool for about 3 to 4 hours a day. And they are for 5 days a week. But again, that really, it's not the 3 hours they are doing some writing skills or something like that. So don't get intimidated by that. They're having fun, they are learning a lot of things, they are playing games, they are drawing, they're doing this. So I would say around 2 to 4 hours is what typically is there in India. I don't know how it's outside India, probably might be similar. Kate might be able to say.
Yeah, it's similar, really. But I think there aren't many parents. It's normally between 3 and 5 days a week. So it's. I think it's like we spoke about before, that it depends on whether you want children to be more socialized with different people. They're not learning the whole time. It's more for the social interaction and the play. So don't be scared by the idea of them being away that 5 days a week.
Yep.
I see 2 more questions from Dr. Sangeeta. One of those, of course, she says, can you clear on play school, preschool? So this is something we clarified at the very beginning of the session, Dr. Sangeeta, that for the purposes of the discussion, all education up till the age of 6, we're bringing under the common umbrella of preschool. And your other question was, this one is a little more specific. After the pandemic, if my child crosses the age of preschool, can I send him directly to a higher grade?
That's going to become a very pertinent question soon. How would that answer in the wake of 10 standard exams getting cancelled? This is the same logic now. They are all in the 11th standard, junior college, as you say. So what's the criteria for the college selection criteria? Doesn't exist. There are no exams, so they're going to go by the internal marks. So I think it's going to we've got to wait and watch. Nobody can really decide. But I would feel, if I had a child at that time and they are getting ready for grade school, I think it's the onus is up to the parents to prepare the child and go directly into grade school.
All right, so it is possible, very much.
It is definitely possible.
Okay. I think we have one last one from Manjari. She says, what should be done for personality development during this pandemic? Her son is 2 years of age.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking about it. I mean, have a lot of conversation with your child. Personality is going to develop anyway. So, how you groom your child, in a sense, talk to your child, tell him stories, read to him books. He's 2 years old and he must be quite a mover, running around the whole place. So, create experiential places for him. Take him. You may not be able to take him out to too many places anywhere because of the lockdown and stuff like that, depending on where you are. But still, within your home itself, you can create an environment where why don't you create stations like the Montessori philosophy? Have your room having a different station, create a different experience in each room, and do something together with your child. Have different people, members of the family, doing things with your child at different times. So whenever he sees a new person, he's very shy. Yeah, I'm sure my daughter was the same too. But I don't think that inhibits them. Whenever they get into an activity, everybody around becomes all one with that activity. So don't worry too much about it, Manjari, I would say. So just keep doing all the things that we've been recommending, and I'm sure your child will have a wonderful personality of his own.
Awesome. I think we have been able to answer all the questions that came in. That may just be a first. So that was great.
So Kate probably gave a very informative view of all the methodologies. So all our parents are very happy.
Yeah.
So thank you all for joining in today. I hope this helped you take away a few insights around this, I think, pretty much universally faced question. And as always, do not hesitate to reach out to our Bablr customer support for any questions you may have remaining after this session, or any other relevant question for that matter. We're always open. Thank you both, Kate and Vidyut, for your time today. Appreciate it very, very much.
Thanks, Abhinav, for having us on. And thanks to
Yes.
all the parents for such wonderful questions.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.